Hello guys and welcome to the video. So today we're going to be talking about Fran, the Light Fairy Queen. And what we're going to do is pretty much talk about everything that you're going to need to know, especially as a new player, about Fran and how you build her, where you can take her, why she's doing the things she's doing. I think some of it's going to be actual important information, especially if you're new. So, stay tuned. Not only that, we're going to do this with many monsters. So we're going to do it with other units like Spectra, Sath, just all these units. So it's not just Fran, we're going to do it with tons. So let's actually get into it though. Let's look at her skills. The first thing we need to do is look at her skill set, because to be able to tell you about her runes, I want you guys to understand why we're putting the runes on her that we're putting on her, and why. I think it'll help explain everything if we first look at her skills. So her first skill, she attacks the enemy 3 times with a whirling storm of light. Each attack has a 20% chance to weaken the attack power for 2 turns and decrease the attack bar by 10%. When fully skilled up, the harmful effect rate increases by 40%. It's pretty nice. One thing to note about this first skill, it's a multi-hit. It decreases attack bar and decreases its attack power, which is going to help with lots of places, like in the Giant's floor, being able to attack break the enemy. This can help in places like Arena, preventing some units from doing big damage. We'll get into detail about that later, but it's a very good first skill. Skill number 2 removes all harmful effects on the target ally and recovers its HP. The recovery amount is proportionate to her attack power. So again, the heal is based off of Fran's attack power, so you want to get her more attack. The recovery goes up by 30%, and it goes from every 3 turns to every 2 turns when fully skilled up. On the third skill, recovers the HP of all allies, increases the attack power, and grants immunity for 2 turns. The recovery amount is proportionate to her attack power. When fully skilled up, the recovery increases by 25%, and it goes from every 5 turns to 4 turns. So this is important to know. Also, she has a speed lead. It's universal, so you can use this everywhere. Speed leads are really good. Highly recommend using her as one of your leaders in places like Arena and in Guild Wars, because that will it'll matter a lot there. So after looking through her skills, what can we say? What are the stats she's going to need? And before we answer that, I'd like to think it's like if you look at every monster, most monsters need 4 stats. They don't need 4, but they can use 4 stats. Look at a unit like Darien. Darien, you really bring him for his passive, but what 4 stats can he use? He can use speed, because you always want your units to be fast. For him, you want him to be tanky, so tons of HP, tons of defense, and then even accuracy, so he's landing his debuffs. So for Fran, straight off the bat, we could tell that she needs to have high attack power, because her heals are based off of attack power. But since she's a healer, she also needs to have high HP, because a healer that can get killed in 1 shot is not that great of a healer, right? We want her to be able to survive. So even if she does take a couple hits, she's all good, right? We want her to be the last one dying in these fights, in fact. So she needs to have high attack power, high HP. You want her to be fast because of her third skill. She buffs the enemy, or she not buffs the enemy, she buffs your allies. That's what I meant to say. So she buffs your allies. And we can go a little bit into this. We can go a little bit deeper into this. So think about it like this. She increases. Let's talk about the attack power part. If she's going after your attackers, like your nukers, like if Crow does his third skill, like his Scar, and then she gives him attack power, what's the point of that? You've already lost out on thousands of damage. Your runs are now taking longer. Because she is slower, your runs are taking longer. So even if you have the best team out there, if no one is speed tuned correctly, meaning that she's not up to speed, like she doesn't have a good enough speed to place the attack buff before he attacks, your runs are taking longer. And you're talking about, it could be anywhere from a couple seconds to like 30 seconds or whatever being added onto your times. Making her much faster than your team so she can place the attack buff on the team before they attack will allow you to finish your runs much quicker. And another thing is the immunity. Again, think about like Kairos. You go into Kairos, you go into the Giant's floor, and you get to the final stage, right? The final wave. You're fighting the Giant. and the tower defense breaks you. And then Fran puts immunity. Remember, Fran's third skill, while it does place immunity, it doesn't cleanse. So now you have an immunity, but you still are defense broken. So in the instant that boss counterattacks, he's killing one of your allies instantly. It's one hit. One of your allies is going to be gone the next rotation, because the boss counterattacks every 7 hits. Or if he does an AoE swipe, everyone's dead. So you lose. Go into places like Arena. If the enemy moves first and your unit doesn't move first, they could stun you. They can crowd control you. They could defense break your units. They can attack break your units. Oblivion, whatever. You don't want this to happen. You want her to move first so she places immunity so your team is safe. So she needs to be fast. She needs to have high attack, and she needs to have tons of HP. And if you meet some of these requirements, then you may go accuracy for that first skill, so she's attack breaking and reducing attack bar. But let's actually talk about some of the requirements. So for these stats, I have a minimum amount of stats that you should have for Fran as a beginner, right? And the runes I have on her are not grinded at all, right? So for her info, for the stats, again, you want attack for good heals. So the minimum attacks that you want is plus 700. If you at least, as a beginner, start off with plus 700 attack, you'll have good heals. You have pretty decent heals, and you can increase it throughout, as you continue playing the game. For HP, you want a minimum of plus 16,000. So you want her to be able to take quite a few hits. We already talked about it. And then for speed, you want her to have a minimum of plus 120. And again, remember, for all these stats, I'm saying a bonus. So these are the bonus stats. So the green numbers here, that's what you want. So plus 120, so she moves fast. She's moving before your team, but also before the enemy. You want her to move first. We'll look at her runes real quick. You can see all of these are not grinded at all, except this one. This one, the HP was switched around, but it's not that big of a deal. It's not really. Even if she lost that 13% HP, she'd still be above the requirements. So, and again, accuracy if you can get it. So let's talk about her rune builds, right? So we know her skills, we know what her stats should be at least when you're first starting. What kind of rune builds? So for early games, there are 3 type of rune builds you can go with, and then I'll talk about other rune builds that I've seen some people do. But usually speed or swift, right? You want her on swift runes. Swift runes are going to get her that speed. When you have a set of 4, they're going to give you the plus 25% speed. You want her to be fast. Again, we've talked about it. You want her to be super duper fast. And then for that 2 set that you can throw on her, because you've already thrown in 4 runes, you can fit 2 more runes. So for the 2 set, you can either throw energy, shield, or focus. Energy would be for the HP. So energy runes provide 15% HP for every 2 energy runes that are on your unit. Shield runes will provide a shield for all allies for 3 turns based off of 15% of your HP. And then focus runes will provide accuracy, which 20% is really it's pretty good. I'd be at like 46% accuracy. So this will allow you to land your first skill a little bit more. Now, of course, I've kind of like ranked these rune sets, and I'll give you my reasons as to why I ranked them in that way, right? Obviously, Swift Energy is at the bottom. I think Swift Energy is as basic as you can get with it, but it's still good. Like, don't get me wrong. It's still good. But all these sets are really doing is kind of adding onto your stats. But when you're able to kind of make up for the stats and the subs, and you're like, okay, I want to kind of add a little bit, extra stuff, then you start throwing on like focus runes or whatever. Or like even like how you see some late game players, they use a lot of violent runes because they can make up for a lot of the stats through grindstones and reaps and all that. And they typically aim for better runes, while as a beginner you don't really have a lot of runes at your disposal. So in the beginning, when you first start out, Swift Energy is completely fine. But as time goes on, you can probably switch to Swift Focus, which is the second best early game build in my opinion. The focus is going to help you land that first skill much more. Being able to attack break the enemy is really good. Being able to reduce the attack bar is amazing. I think that's really all I have to say about the Swift Focus. But ultimately, the best set you can have on her as a beginner is Swift Shield. And I kind of want to show you this. So I have Giants running in the background. So you see with the Saf, I have the Saf Tattoo team running. Notice this. I want you to watch how this wave goes. So they're doing all their skills. The enemy's going to move. So the enemy just attacked, and that first attack from that first crystal didn't do next. It did next to nothing because all that damage went into the shield. So this is allowing my team to survive more, and this benefits my whole team, right? It doesn't just benefit Fran; it benefits my whole team. So these shield runes definitely help with this. Like you see, it's like the Giant just attacked Tattoo. Tattoo's at an attribute disadvantage, and she was able to take all of that, right? She was still at like 80% health. And typically, if I didn't have shield runes, she would probably be at half health, or if she was even defense broken, she'd just die. But with these shield runes, the shield rune is providing her like 4K almost extra HP, if not a little bit more than that, in health. So it's just a little bit of like it's like an extra layer of defense. So it's providing for safer runs. So my runs are super consistent now because of these shield runes. So I think this will make your runs safer, which will allow you to do stuff like the 2A dungeons much safer, TOA hard, guild battles, arena. It just makes everything safer. 3 turns of shields. It's really good. Now, two builds. I've seen some people build on Despair for some reason. The reasoning behind that, some claim, is because her first skill is a multi-hit, so she could Despair stun them on the first skill. But that is far from enough of a reason for me to rune her that way. I mean, if you can get the stats high enough to where you don't have to worry about her speed, by all means, go ahead and do that. But I think Despair is a terrible build on her, regardless of her first skill is a multi-hit. No, it's not for me. I want to even throw really Despair on even like Lauren, where she has multi-hits. I throw different runes on her. So Despair is not that good. I've seen another one where people use Fatal Runes. So they use Fatal Runes to get that attack percent, right? They get that missing attack percent that they couldn't get through runes. So they have more healing. But I think Swift is probably the best rune or rune set you could throw on your Fran. You really do want to get her to be fast as possible. Even though I gave you guys a minimum of 120 speed, you need to make her as fast as you possibly can. If you can get her to plus 200 speed, do it. Like, you really want her to be fast. So getting her that, I'd rather you heal a little bit less and be faster and get that immunity up than heal really well, right? Because if it doesn't matter if you can heal 20k HP. If you're being crowd controlled by the enemy and you're frozen or you're stunned, the healing doesn't matter. Fran has still failed her job. She needs to be able to place that immunity and attack buff before everybody. So get her fast. Get her really, really fast. So try to aim for Swift runes and then go energy or focused or shield. Highly recommend shield, but if you have to go for those other two, it's completely fine. Now I have a couple late game runes that you would throw on her, or builds. Now I'll explain a couple of these runes. There are 2 rune sets that I gotta explain to you, but it won't be that hard to understand. So late game, what you're gonna want to do is you're gonna pretty much want to throw her on violent runes. Violent runes pretty much give you an additional chance to take extra turns. I believe it's a 22% chance. 22% chance. So what this will allow you to do is it'll allow you to get your healing skills out faster. It'll allow you to do more damage. And violent runes you can use for a lot of people, or pretty much almost every unit in the game. Violent runes are good for them. Being able to get through your cooldowns quicker, heal much more, just do more. Taking turns is very important in this game, so having rune sets that allow you to do extra turns, it's amazing. So you want to throw her on violent runes. And then most of the builds are stuff like violent shield, violent focus, violent energy. But a new one for you will be violent will. So will runes are kind of like insurance, right? So if we take a look at will runes, right here, I only have one, is it provides you 1 turn of immunity. Now, will runes aren't too important for beginners, especially since more likely than anything, in the Kairos floor, you're going to be outspeeding the enemy, so that will rune will pretty much do nothing for you, unless your units are really, really slow. Then it might do something for you. But what this is, will runes are used for like places like PvP, like guild battles, an arena, or places like Labyrinth where the enemy, like, you know, those like time or speed limit stages. It's good in places like that too. But what it is basically insurance. So if the enemy does outspeed you, if you have will runes, it's going to be much harder for the enemy to crowd control you, because you already have immunity up the instant you enter battle. It's harder for the enemy to defense break you. They're going to have to strip you. They're going to have to strip all those beneficial effects off before they can do anything. So think about it like this. Let's say I have Fran, Verd, and then Darian in Siege, right? They're on my Siege defense. And the enemy enters with a Galleon. Galleon is a really good unit. He has a speed lead, so let's say he does outspeed me. Obviously, Galleon is a setup unit. He's going to use his 3rd skill to try and defense break me, and it's not going to work because I have will runes. Now, will runes, each unit has to have will runes, and not one unit won't provide immunity for everybody. But let's just say every single one of them does have will runes. He can't defense break us. So we're good. He would have to bring a strip unit. So it's just a little bit of extra insurance, just in case. But generally, speed, HP, attack on Fran, as you can see here. And then you can see in the subs, I have aimed for all the stats that she needs. Attack, speed, and HP. And you see in a couple of them, there's defense or resistance. But, and then after I've ruined her, I looked for stats that I might be low on, like HP or defense or attack. And then I used artifacts to make up for those missing stats. So next, let's talk about where she could be used. Now, Fran is going to be one of those obvious units. You can use her everywhere. You use her in places like giants. You'll use her in places like dragons. Easily, you can use her in places like Necro. Well, she doesn't need to be in Necro. The thing is, Necropolis, the boss doesn't really place debuffs. I don't think he places any debuffs, actually, now that I think about it. But she can be used there because she still has a multi-hit. You're going to use her in the 2A dimensional holes. I have videos where she's pretty much one of the #1 units I use in every single one of those. TOA, Arena, Guild Wars, you're going to use her everywhere. But it makes her kit is just reliable. It's a really reliable kit. She has healing, immunity, attack buff, as well as crowd control on her 1st skill. She's a really good unit, and to be honest, you won't really ever stop using her because, again, her kit's just that good. A speed lead is big for making sure you get those fast, runs in places like Kairos, and taking the first few turns in places like PvP. And it's universal, which is an added bonus. I've talked about that earlier. She can buff your units to prevent them from receiving debuffs, and she can buff them to help them deal more damage, which again, faster run times. Her overall versatility makes her an amazing unit. She's a really good unit, and the fact that they give her to you through Summoner's Way, I love, right? So you can get her through here. Where is it? I believe it's by getting a Swift stat or by clearing Mount White Ragon. Oh, clear Kabir Ruins. But just in case, if you get later into the game and you're like, I want to have more than just one of her, you can go to the shop and go to the Ancient Coins, go to Monster Pieces, and you can obtain her here as well. Who knows, because in Siege and places like Guild content, You're going to always want to have multiple of one unit when you do start doing that. So I might build more than one of her. See, having her on different types of builds, test her a little bit. But she's not that hard of a unit to kind of like talk about. She's really easy to kind of go over. She's just a good unit in general. You can use her everywhere. Some units are more specific and dedicate to specific places, but she's one of those units that are so versatile. You could pretty much use her everywhere. So that's pretty much it. That's the video. We've talked about her runes. We talked about her skills, where she's good at. That's pretty much it. I hope you guys learned something in this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.